thank you everyone for joining us for our presentation today on extraordinary ability visas. My name is Dustin Saldariaga and I am an immigration attorney with Scott Legal PC. Today, as I mentioned, we are going to spend some time talking about the extraordinary ability visas, including an overview of the various visas that fall under this category, as well as some helpful things to keep in mind when you're thinking about applying for one of these visas. A few things before we get started. Some of you may know that Ian Scott, the founder of our firm, was on a TN visa and has actually navigated several visas. He's currently on an E2 visa. So his experience navigating the immigration system in the US really does shape how we work with our clients. And we really do take a client focused approach when helping our clients navigate through the system, which we think is really unique and a key part of what we do and how we do it. Our firm is, however, a full service immigration firm. So although we are focusing, and our firm does focus on business immigration and business visas, such as the ones we're talking about today, we do handle family immigration cases, humanitarian cases, and really any issues that touch on immigration law. So if those questions do come up for you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Please. This webinar is part of an ongoing series. We try to hold at least 2 webinars each month, and these cover a variety of immigration topics. After the webinar, we will send you the PowerPoint presentation, which you see on your screen. We'll send you a guide on extraordinary ability visas, and we'll send you a link to where you can sign up for our additional webinars. And finally, we'll send you a link to this recording. We also do post our recordings to our webinars to YouTube, along with other videos that are shorter than our webinars. And those, as well as our webinars, really do cover a variety of topics. So please check out our YouTube channel. We try to make a lot of great information available for free. So do check that out. If you have a question during the presentation, you can send it in via either the Q&A function on Zoom or the chat box on Zoom. I'll be monitoring those, and we will likely get to all questions, but we'll probably save them for the end of the presentation. So stay tuned until the end. Today, we're very fortunate to have Michaela Vrazdova here to speak with us. Michaela is a fellow associate at the firm, and she's processed many extraordinary ability visa applications and has a wealth of experience. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Michaela.
Thank you, Dustin, and good morning, everyone. So let's get started with the presentation. So what are some of the extraordinary ability visa categories? So the first category I will be talking about is O1 visa. So O1 visa is a non-immigrant visa for individuals who have extraordinary ability in the field of science, education, business, or athletics. And to qualify for an O1A visa, you will have to show that you are one of the small percentage of people who have risen to the very top of your field. And we'll discuss the O1 visa in more detail on the next slide. Then the second category is an O1B visa. An O1B visa is a non-immigrant visa for individuals who have extraordinary ability in the field of arts, or who have achieved extraordinary achievement in the motion picture or television industry. So the standard for an O1B visa is a little bit different than for the O1A visa, and the standard is a little bit lower. So for the O1A visa, you have to show that you are one of the top people in your field, but the O1B standard for people in arts is that you must have received a distinction in the field, and this means that you have received a recognition substantially above that ordinarily encountered, and you are described as prominent, leading, or well-known figure in your particular field. And the standard for motion picture and television industry is also a little bit different. So there you will have to show that you are you have achieved achievements substantially above those of your peers. And then the third category of the visa categories is an EB-1A green card. So the EB-1A green card is a green card which allows you to kind of live in the US permanently. Once you have a green card, you can stay here as long as you want. So that's the difference, because the O1A and O1B visa is just a non-immigrant visa that is granted for 3 years. So you always have to kind of keep renewing the O1A and O1B visas. But once you have a green card, such as the EB-1A green card, you can just live in the US permanently. And so the EB-1A green card is for individuals who have extraordinary ability in the field of science, arts, education, business, or athletics. So it's all of it's kind of like the fields that I mentioned for the O1A visa and O1B visa. So if anyone is already in the US on an O1A or O1B visa, they could potentially qualify for an EB-1A green card. And the standard for the EB-1A green card is higher than the standards for O1B and O1A visas. So the standard is that you are one of the small percentage of the people in your field, and you have risen to the very top of your field, and you have sustained a national or international acclaim, and your achievements have been recognized in your field. So the standard is really the highest for EB-1A green card, and the EB-1A green card is limited really kind of to the people in top of their fields. And for all of these 3 categories, you not only have to show in the visa application that you already kind of achieved all these achievements in your industry, but you also have to show that once once the visa is approved, or once you get the green card, you will kind of keep working in the same industry once you come to the US. So now let's talk more about the O1A visa. So what do you need to show when you want to apply for an O1A visa? So you will either have to show that you have received a major internationally recognized award, such as, for example, a Nobel Prize, or, if you don't have such an achievement, which most people don't, you will need to show that you meet at least 3 of the following criteria. So the first type of evidence you could submit is, evidence showing that you received nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards. And here, you would want to submit evidence that you have the award. So, for example, like a photo of the award, and then you would want to include evidence kind of showing why is the award or prize you received kind of reputable. So you would want to include evidence about the organization that gave you the award, and if there are any kind of like past winners kind of who are well known in the industry, you would also want to mention those, just to kind of show that the award is reputable in the industry. Then the second type of evidence you could submit is evidence of your membership in associations in your field that require outstanding achievements of their members. So here you would again want to submit some evidence about the about the association or organization, kind of showing that the organization is reputable in the field, and only people who are in the top of their field can become members. You would want to submit kind of criteria of the organization, what criteria a person has to meet to become a member. If the criteria, if the kind of like the website of the organization says that anyone can become member, that doesn't really help your O1A petition. But if the criteria say that you have to have many years of experience, you have to won an award, and kind of like really only people in their field, in the top of their field, can become members, that would be helpful for your petition. And again, if there are any kind of like well-known people in your industry who are members of this association, then you would also want to mention that in the application. So then the third type of evidence you could submit is evidence that there is published material in professional or other publications or newspapers about you and your work in the field. So here, you would want to submit like the articles that were published about you, and then you would want to submit kind of like evidence and circulation statistics about the media where it was published. So, for example, if there was an article about your, like business achievements in Forbes or like New York Times, that would be obviously very helpful for your application because those kind of media, they have great circulation statistics showing that a lot of people kind of like read these, and it's kind of like generally known that it's very kind of like hard to get published in this media unless you are in the very top of your field. On the other hand, if there is an article about you in some like small local media, in your home country that, only issues like 500, issues of these magazines per month, that would not necessarily be that helpful for your O1A visa petition. Then the other type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you kind of published or kind of invented original scientific, scholarly, or business, you made original scientific, scholarly, or business related contribution of major significance in your field. So this can, for example, be, if you have any like patent, or if you kind of invented some like new process, this could fall under this category, and you would want to explain, like why is this contribution original? Like why is it kind of unique? Why is it original? And then how does it contribute to the field? Like why does it have major significance to the field? And evidence of this could be, for example, media articles about this new new discovery or new contribution. It could also be like letters from expert that kind of like discuss this contribution and things like that. Then another type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you kind of wrote scholarly articles in professional journals or other major media in the field. So obviously for this, you would want to submit evidence of the article, and again, kind of like evidence about the particular media outlet, like where it was published. So again, if you published in some kind of like well-known magazine or newspaper or journal, that would be very, very helpful for the application. If the media outlet was kind of smaller, not that famous, not that well-known, you could still submit it as an evidence, but it would, it would have kind of like a lesser way for application. Then the other type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you have high salary, or you are receiving or received in the past high salary or remuneration for your services. So, for this, if you kind of previously worked in the US, you would be submitting W-2s or your tax returns. And if you worked in your kind of home country, then it would be kind of like the equivalent to the US, payroll, pay stubs, tax returns to show that you have received high salary. And then the other type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you participated on a panel as a judge, and you judged the work of others. So, this could be, for example, if you were invited as a judge to judge some kind of like a well-known competition in your field, or this could also be if you kind of like reviewed, if you did like a peer review for scholarly journals. And the last type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you were employed in a critical or essential capacity for organizations that have distinguished reputation in their field. So, if you have, for example, 20 years of work experience, and you worked for, like some of the like best companies in the field, you would be submitting, letters from your previous employers, kind of explaining, what you were doing for these organizations, and why, why your employment and why your job duties were critical or essential to that organization. And again, you do not have to submit evidence that you meet all of these criteria. You just need to show that you meet at least 3 of these criteria I just went through. So now let's discuss the O1B visa in a little bit more detail. So the standard here, or the type of evidence, it's a little bit similar than the O1A. So again, if you have one, if you were nominated for kind of like a well-known national or international award, then you could submit evidence of that. So for the O1B, because O1B is a visa for artists, so this could be, for example, if you won or were nominated for an Oscar, Grammy, or other kind of like well-known prizes like this. But if you do not have these, then again, you could submit evidence that you meet at least 3 of these following criteria, and I will just go through them quickly. So the first one is that you have been or you will be performing a lead or starring role in productions or events that have distinguished reputation. So let's say, for example, that you are an architect and you want to apply for an O1B visa. So to submit evidence for this first criterion, you would be submitting evidence showing, kind of like the well-known projects you worked on. So if you designed some like well-known buildings all over the world, you would submit some evidence of that. If there were any like publicity, like articles about this, you would be submitting the articles. And if any experts in the field can kind of comment on the significance and on your role in the designing these projects, you could submit the expert letters as well. Then the second type of evidence is evidence that there are kind of like published materials about you and your work in the field. So again, you would be submitting basically the media articles, and again, the circulation statistics of the media outlets, again showing that these journals or newspapers or articles are many people read them. And again, for example, if you're an architect, then there was an article in like the Architect Digest, and publications like that, like well-known publications in the particular industry, you would be submitting that. Then the third type of evidence you could submit is evidence that you had a lead, starring or critical role for organizations or establishments with distinguished reputations. So here it would be evidence that previously you worked for kind of like well-known distinguished companies in your field. And usually what we submit are, again, letters from your previous employers that kind of explain what exactly you were doing for these organizations and why your role for the organizations was lead, starring, or critical. The next type of evidence you could submit is evidence of record of major commercial or critically acclaimed success. The next type of evidence would be evidence of significant recognitions for achievements from organizations, government, or other experts. So these are basically expert letters from well-known people in your industry. And we'll discuss the expert letters in a little bit more detail later in the presentation. The next type of evidence you could submit is evidence of your high salary. So the evidence for this would be the same as for the O1A visa, such as your W-2s, pay stubs, or tax returns. Or you could also submit other comparable evidence, but this is only applicable for people who are applying for an O1B visa for the artists, not for the people who are applying under the motion picture television category. So the other comparable evidence means that if you work in certain field and the kind of like the criteria I just went through don't really apply to your case or to your profession, then you could submit other comparable evidence to still show that you have achieved the distinction in your field and you are a well-known person in your field. Perfect. So now let's discuss the EB-1A green card a little bit. So the requirements for EB-1A green card are very similar to the O-1A and the O-1B criteria. So I will not go through them in detail, but it's basically the same. Like you either have to show that you have won kind of internationally recognized awards, such as a Nobel Prize. So let's say that you won a Nobel Prize, you could qualify for the EB-1A green card just based on that. Like you would not have to submit anything else. But if you haven't won internationally recognized award like this, then again, like similarly as for the O-1A or O-1B visa, you would have to show that you meet at least 3 of these 10 criteria, which are very similar to the O-1A and O-1B criteria. And when the USCIS or when the government is adjudicating the EB-1A petition, they use what is called a Kazarian standard. So this is basically like a two-step analysis there's two-step analysis of the EB-1A petition. So in the first step, USCIS will look at the evidence you submitted, and they will look at whether you submitted evidence showing that you meet at least 3 of the EB-1A criteria. And so if you submitted evidence of that, then they move to the second step. If you only submitted evidence that you meet 2 of the 10 criteria, then the kind of like they deny the petition. They will not even go to the step 2. But if you did submit evidence of the 3 criteria, they move to the second step. And in the second step, they look at the quality of the evidence you submitted, and they really want to see that you are one of the very small percentage of people who have arisen to the top of their field, and you are like really on top of your field. So let's take an example. So let's say that you published, as I mentioned previously, as you published certain articles in a lot of kind of like media outlets. So they will look at this evidence, and let's say that there are articles published about you in like medias like Forbes, New York Times, and media like that, that will have a great, way for the EB-1A petition, because it really shows that, you are one of kind of like the small percentage of the people, in your field that is publishing for these media. But if you publish articles for kind of like, like small journals, that not many people read, that would not be that beneficial for your, or helpful for your EB-1A petition. So in the second step, they look at all the evidence you submitted, and they look at the quality of the evidence, and they really want to see that, you are one of the top people in your field. So they go through the step 1, step 2, and then they will make a decision whether whether they think that you qualify for the EB-1A green card. Perfect. So now let's look at some differences between O-1A and O-1B visa. So I would say that the big difference is that the O-1A, the kind of like the what field you are working at. So if you are working in the field of sciences, education, business, or athletics, then you would be applying for the O-1A visa. The O-1B visa would not even be available to you. But if you are working in the field of arts or motion picture and television industry, then you would be applying for the O-1B visa. Then, as I already mentioned, the standards for these 2 visas are different, and the standard for the O-1A visa is higher. So for the O-1A visa, you have to show that you are one of the small kind of percentage of people who have arisen to the very top of your field. And the standard for O1B visa for arts is that you have a high level of achievement, and you received kind of recognition that is substantially above the ordinarily encountered. And for the motion picture television, you have to show that you have received a level of acclaim that is substantially above that of your peers. Then for how long can the O1A and O1B visa be issued? So initially, both of them can be issued for 3 years, and then you can renew them either for 1 year or 3 years. And then your family can come to the US with you, both if you're applying for an O1A or O1B visa. And the family means your immediate family. So this means your spouse and your children under the age of 21. So now let's discuss the national interest waiver green card a little bit. So this is a green card, similarly as the EB1A green card. This is an EB2 category. This is a green card. That means that if you are approved for the national interest waiver, you can stay in the US kind of permanently, and you only have to renew your green card like every 10 years, but you can just live here. And the interesting thing about the national interest waiver is that first, it allows you to file a self-petition, meaning that you do not need a US employer to sponsor you for the national interest waiver. And I forgot to mention, you can also self-petition for the EB1A green card. But this is a great advantage of both the EB1A green card and the national interest waiver. And a second advantage of the national interest waiver is that you don't have to go through the labor certification process. So normally, if you're applying for a green card through the PERM process, you first have to have an employer that is sponsoring you, but they also have to file labor condition application. They have to test the labor market to kind of prove that there is no available US worker. But for the national interest waiver, this is not necessary. So the process is much faster than the PERM process, and this is a great advantage of the national interest waiver. So for the national interest waiver, you have to show that either you have an advanced degree. So this means that you have at least master's or higher, or you have, if you don't have master's or higher, then you can show that you have bachelor's degree and 5 years of progressive work experience in your field. But you can also qualify for the national interest waiver if you don't have education. So if you don't have kind of like the education in your field, you can show that you meet at least 3 of the 7 criteria that are listed on this slide. And I will not go through them. We'll send you the PowerPoint after this webinar, so you can go through them. But just important thing to keep in mind is that even if you don't have kind of like the master's or the bachelor's and 5 years of work experience, you could still qualify for the national interest waiver if you meet 3 of these criteria. And so for the national interest waiver, you have to show that the proposed endeavor has both substantial merit and national importance. So the national interest waiver is available to people who work in many industries, such as people who work in business, culture, health, education, technology, science, or even entrepreneurs. And to meet kind of like this criterion, you will have to show that the endeavor you are planning to do in the US will further human knowledge in key areas, or will produce a strong economic impact that will have a substantial merit. And to determine whether your endeavor has a national importance, the government will consider the potential kind of like future impacts and its importance to the US. Then the second thing the government will look at when they are adjudicating the NIW petitions is they look at whether you are well positioned to advance the endeavor in the US. So they will here, they will focus their attention on your background and on your accomplishments. And in order for a government to give you the green card, you know, they have to be comfortable that you are actually able to accomplish what you are saying that you will accomplish. And you know, you have to basically show that you have a track record of success in your particular field. And on balance, you know, it's beneficial to the US to waive the requirements of job offer and labor certification. So here, you know, the government will consider whether it's impractical for applicant to secure a job offer or for petitioner to get a labor certification in light of the nature of your endeavors. So you know, let's say that you are applying for an NIW as an entrepreneur and you own 100% the company in the US. So here, you know, you would not be even able to go through the normal perm process, but you would have to go through the NIW process. And in this third criterion, you know, you would have to argue that there are not kind of available and qualified US workers, and US will benefit from your contributions. You know, for example, if you made some important research in medicine or science, you know, that would be kind of like considered in this third step. And you would also be submitting here evidence that the national interests are being served by your contributions, and they are sufficiently urgent to waive the labor certification process. So this would be the NIW standard. Now let's talk a little bit more detail about the expert letters, opinions I mentioned earlier. So you know, the expert letters are beneficial for all of these visa and green card categories I mentioned. So O1A, O1B, EB1A, and NIW. Usually, you know, we submit a few of expert letters from kind of like well-known people in the industry. So who can write you an expert letter? So, you know, it can be, for example, your previous employer. It can be your kind of professor from university. It can be your colleague, or it can even be someone who you don't know personally. But this person like knows your achievements and is familiar with your achievements in the field. So we generally advise that, you know, you submit some, you know, couple letters from people that kind of personally know you, but you can also submit expert letters from people that don't personally know you, they're just familiar with your achievements. And so how do the expert letters usually look? So in the beginning, the person who is writing this letter usually provides some background information about himself or herself. You know, this person will describe whether they know you and how do they know you. And then the main portion of the expert letters would be basically discussing your work, your accomplishments, and your contributions to the particular field. So, you know, this person would be discussing your kind of like projects, achievements, kind of like in detail, and explaining, you know, why they are important, and explaining why you are kind of like one of the top people in your industry, and why do you qualify for either the O1A, O1B visa or for the green cards. Perfect. So which category should you apply for? So I think the important thing here is to kind of think whether, you know, you want to kind of like come to the US and just kind of like live here temporarily for a couple of years, or if your plan is to move to the US permanently. So the O1A and O1B visas are non-immigrant visas, as I mentioned, and they are only granted for, you know, 3 years in the beginning, and then they can be renewed for 1 or 3 years. But the EB1A green card and the NIW, are green cards that allow you to live in the US permanently. So this is like the first thing you should think about is what's your kind of like plan for the future, because we have, you know, some clients that qualify both for the O1A and O1B and for EB1A or NIW, but they don't want to live in the US permanently. They only want to come, you know, a couple times a year. So in that case, you know, they prefer to apply for the non-immigrant visa. But we also have people who, you know, want to move to the US and just kind of like live here permanently. And if they qualify for both, then they select the green card kind of path. So this is one thing to consider, you know, when you are deciding like which category you want to apply for. Then the second thing to think about is whether, you know, do you have a US employer or US agent, or do you want to file a self-petition? So the O1A and O1B visas, you generally have to have a job offer from a US employer or US agent. But recently there was a change in the regulations, and now you can also set up a company in the US. So you set up, for example, an LLC, and that company can sponsor you for the visa. So for O1A and O1B, you cannot file kind of self-petition, but you can set up a different entity kind of like from yourself. You can set up an entity, and that entity, even if you own 100%, that entity can sponsor you for an O1A or O1B visa. And the green card, so the EB1A green card and the NIW, these allow you to self-petition. So for these, you don't even have to set up any kind of like entity. You can just file it as an individual. You don't have any US employer. You do not need any job offer. You can just file a self-petition and petition yourself for the green card. And the third thing to keep in mind is, you know, what are your family considerations? So for the O1A and O1B, your spouse and children under the age of 21 can come to the US as O3 dependents. Both your spouse and children can study in the US, but kind of like the disadvantage of the O3 is that your spouse cannot work in the US. And then for EB1A green card and the NIW, your spouse and children under the age of 21 can apply for green cards as well. And you know, your spouse and dependents, your spouse can apply for a work authorization and can work in the US. So this is some, you know, one thing to keep in mind is if you kind of qualify for both, and you know, you have a spouse that wants to work in the US and both of you want to kind of like live in the US permanently, then the green card kind of path would probably be, you know, the better path for you and your family. So now let's talk about some considerations, you know, when you are moving from a non-immigrant visa to a green card. And one thing I just want to mention here in the beginning is that many people think that they first have to have an O1A or O1B visa, and only if they had this, the O1A or O1B visa for a couple of years, only then they can apply for the green card. But that's not the case. You know, it's completely fine, you know, if you, for example, lived in your home country your whole life, but you know, if you can submit evidence, if you have you know, sufficient evidence showing that you qualify for the EB1A green card or the NIW, you can immediately apply for the green card. You don't have to go through the O1A and O1B first. You can just apply for the green card. And so, so now let's talk about these considerations. So first, you know, you want to look at, you know, like what are your qualifications? So as I mentioned, the standard for the EB1A green card it's just much higher than for the O1A and O1B. So, you know, let's say that, you know, you are kind of like a well-known person in your industry. And you know, we kind of like look at your case, but we don't, you know, and we don't think that you kind of qualify for a green card immediately. You know, what can be done is that you apply for the O1A and O1B visa you first come to the US on the O1A and O1B visa. You'll be here for a couple of years, and you'll be kind of like building and kind of like acquiring more and more evidence. And once you, kind of like achieved, even like more achievements, and you are even like, you kind of like raise to the top of your field, then eventually we can, we could apply for the EB1A green card. But one thing to keep in mind is just that the standards for the O1A, O1B, and the green cards are different. Then another thing to keep in mind, when you are moving from a visa to a green card, is timing. So, you would want to look at, like how much time is left on your current visa. And some visas are very hard to extend once you file the green card petition. So, if you are, for example, in the US on a TN visa, and once you file the green card petition, the I-140 petition, it would be, very, very hard for you to renew the TN, because the TN visa is a purely kind of non-immigrant visa, and you would most likely not be able to renew it. So it's just kind of like important, to evaluate, like how much time you have left on the TN, and when would be the best time to kind of like file the I-140 petition. And the other consideration is, again, the family consideration. So if you have children that, and you want to apply for a green card for your children, you would want to apply, definitely before they are 21, because once they are over 21, you would not be able to kind of include them in your green card petition. Perfect. So now let's discuss, or let's talk about whether these extraordinary ability categories are available for entrepreneurs. So the answer here is yes. And we have submitted many petitions, like either non-immigrant petitions such as O1A petitions, but also EB1A petitions and NIW petitions for entrepreneurs. And as I mentioned, the great advantage of EB1A and NIW is that the entrepreneur can file a self-petition. So this means that if someone is an entrepreneur and he or she wants to come to the US, they can just kind of file a self-petition. They don't need any job offer in the US. So this is a great advantage of both the EB1 and the NIW. And the NIW was not, I would say that it was not always like that kind of, like friendly towards the entrepreneurs. But a couple of years ago, there was a famous decision. It's called Matter of Danasar. And in this decision, this decision just kind of like made the NIW a much friendlier category for entrepreneurs. And as I mentioned previously, for O1A and O1B, you cannot file self-petition, but what you can do is you can, if you're an entrepreneur, you can set up an entity in the US, such as LLC or corporation. You can own 100% in this entity, and then this entity can sponsor you for an O1A or O1B visa.
Perfect. Thank you, Michaela. So a lot of excellent information. And as you've been speaking, we've gotten some great questions rolling in. So your last slide was focused on entrepreneurs applying for these visas, and we got several great questions on that topic. So let's start with that. So Arthur has asked, is an entrepreneur eligible for NIW in light of Matter of Danasar? You explained that it is. So what type of evidence would an entrepreneur provide in order to qualify for an NIW? And I'll actually combine a few of Arthur's questions. Can an incubator or an accelerator selection or participation be considered as a reward as part of that evidence? And maybe not just in NIW, but perhaps also in O1 visa. And finally, if a startup founder doesn't have the traditional evidence that you'd have in an NIW case, and wants to protect the privacy and the proprietary rights of the company, what kinds of evidence would that entrepreneur provide as an alternative, if anything?
Yeah, so here, as I mentioned, we'll send the PowerPoint after the webinar, but basically for I think the first question was asking like what type of evidence. So, kind of like to meet the threshold requirement, you would want to submit that you either have the degree or you meet 3 of the 7 criteria. So you would want to submit evidence of that. Then I think it was asking whether an incubator or an accelerator
Yeah,
selection
sorry,
can be.
Michaela. Maybe I should have broken it up.
No, it's okay. It's
It
okay.
was a lot.
I see the
Um,
questions, but
yeah,
yeah,
so exactly. So whether being selected for an incubator or an accelerator counts as a reward and
yeah,
an award.
yeah. I think you could definitely submit it, and it would be kind of like you would be submitting similar evidence as I kind of like discussed for the EB1A. So you would want to kind of describe like why this selection, why was it prestigious, like how many people were selected, what were the criteria to be selected, like how many, if you received any kind of like money, like how much money you received, and things like that, to just kind of describe like why it was prestigious. So but you could submit evidence of that. And then I think the third question was like if you could submit any other types of evidence. So here unfortunately, like the government, they only list kind of like the 7 so you can either submit evidence that of the 7 criteria, or you could submit also kind of like other comparable evidence. So so yeah, you could, if you don't want to kind of disclose some evidence because of proprietary rights, you could submit other types of evidence and just kind of describe like why it's why it's relevant to the case.
Perfect. And staying on the topic of the NIW, what do you, Michaela, I know this is a complicated question given changes with COVID and staffing reductions, but do you have an idea of how long it usually takes to process an NIW green card?
Yeah, I don't know like exactly right now. But definitely, several months. But I don't know from the top of my head the exact timeline right now.
Mhm. Um, if someone were to start a business, can they apply for the NIW and come to the US to start a business there?
Yeah, I mean, you would still want to submit the evidence for the NIW to kind of show that you meet the threshold criteria and that you qualify for the NIW, and you would want to explain like why your business and yourself, like why you qualify for the NIW.
Perfect. And does the NIW have any kind of salary or minimum business revenue requirements?
No, there are no like minimum requirements. I would say that the kind of like the higher the revenues are, like then you could show like what that the business would have kind of substantial economic impact on a US economy. So I would say that the higher the better, but there are like no minimum requirements in the regulations.
Perfect. And we have a question. Can someone qualify for an NIW using experience from 20 years ago?
Yeah, it doesn't matter like when the experience was from, but again, you would have to either show that you have the master's or bachelor's and 5 years of experience, or if you only have experience, then that alone is not enough. You would have to meet like 3 of the kind of criteria listed on the slide. So not just experience, but you would have to show at least like that you meet 2 other criteria or submit other comparable evidence.
Perfect. And then is rising to the top of your field a common criteria of O1A and EB1A, or is it more applicable to the EB, the green card category, EB1A?
Yeah, so the standard for the O1A is that you have arisen to the very top of your field, and for EB1A it's the same, like you have arisen to the very top of your field and you have sustained a national or international acclaim. It's just for the EB1A, as I mentioned, like the analysis is kind of like much more like detailed. So like the EB1A analysis, they you know, they look at like all the evidence you submitted, they look at the quality of the evidence, and then, you know, like they make the decision like whether you know, you are like one of the small percentage of the people and you qualify for a green card. So it's similar, but the standard for EB1A is higher.
Perfect. And staying on the topic of EB1A, we have a question about the evidence, specifically the articles. So for the EB1A scholarly articles criteria, what are the minimum or maximum number of articles or publications expected under this category? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, so you know, there is no like minimum amount in the regulations, but I will say that, you know, for example, like you published like one scholarly article about, you know, you did some cancer research and it was published in like the New England Journal. So like that alone could be enough. But then, you know, if you don't have that, if you kind of published, you know, 10 articles in like less famous and like less prestigious kind of journals, then you know, you would be submitting evidence of that. So there is like no minimum amount, but I would say like the more you know, the more you can get, the more you can publish, the better it will be for your application.
Perfect. So we have a question here that's really about a couple slides back, moving from a non-immigrant visa to a green card. So the question is, if I have a business on an E2 visa, can I apply for the NIW after 4 years or after a certain period of time?
Yeah, you can move from E2 to NIW. That's completely fine.
Perfect. I believe we have made it through all of our questions. So Michaela, again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. I think you packed a lot of information in here. We do have another question. Can a specialized advanced certification in IT be accepted as an equivalent of an advanced degree? That's a specific question. Do you happen to know, Michaela?
Let me see. No, I believe like the education like qualifications, you really have to show either master's or bachelor's in 5 years, like certifications or license, and you know, those would not be equivalent to the education.
Perfect. All right. Well, Michaela, thank you again. And thank you all for participating in the presentation today. As I mentioned before, keep an eye out for the email. We'll follow up with you all and we'll share the PowerPoint presentation, a link to the recording itself, as well as a link to our YouTube channel. And again, if you want a lot of great information for free, our YouTube channel is a great resource, as is our blog on our website. So if we can be of any particular help on your case, do please schedule a consultation. We can talk through the specifics of your circumstances and what your goals are. And of course, we'd be very happy to do that. It's what we're here for. So Michaela, thank you again. Everyone, we hope to see you on a future webinar. Stay well in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.